السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، إلها واحدا أحدا فردا صمدا حيا قيوما، نؤمن له بالربوبية ونقر له بالعبودية. من يهد الله فهو المهتدي ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله، أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وصل اللهم وسلم على أوصيائه وخلفائه وعترته وأهل بيته. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل. قال الله في كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الذين يتبعون الرسول النبي الأمي الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث. صدق الله العلي العظيم. وصلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. The 17th of Rabi' al-Awwal is the day in which we celebrate the birth of our holy prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sallam. That took place in the year 570, Common Era, which in the Quran coincides with what is known as Amul Fil, and that is the year in which Mecca and the sanctuary of the Kaaba was attacked by an invading army which sought to destroy the Kaaba, the sanctuary, and eradicate the remembrance of God and to divert the attention of the people. And this is a significant event. And it's described in the Quran in its own short chapter, Surah Al-Fil. أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ فَعَلَ رَبُّكَ بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ. Do you know of what your Lord made of the people of the elephant, the army of the elephant? The army, invading army. At the front of the army were elephants, which were placed in order to effectively invade and trample and destroy anything that was in their path. And the story of the Prophet's birth begins a year before that, when Abdul Muttalib, who was the grandfather of the Prophet, and this is the year 569, had decided to marry off his son Abdullah, who was the father of our Prophet. Abdul Muttalib was known as Shaybatul Hamd. He was a respected individual in Meccan society. In fact, it was his decision that the people of Mecca should retreat from Mecca as the army arrived, in order to at least save the lives of people, if not anything else. And during that year, the year 569, he decided that he would marry off his son, Abdullah. And when they were looking for a potential partner, a spouse, they found Amina bint Wahab. And Amina bint Wahab became the mother of the Prophet. Her father, Wahab, had passed away. So she was in the care of her uncle, a man named Wahab, who was also a respected tribal member from the same tribe of Quraysh, from the clan of Zuhra. And it's interesting because historians narrate that the Prophet, not only was he a noble man, but his father, Abdullah, was also a noble man. His grandfather was a noble man. His great-grandfather was also a noble man. And people respected them as leaders and as elders. And they had a noticeable light which was in them, which some historians describe as the light of prophethood. And they say that this light of prophethood was in them and carried from one generation to another, but it was dormant. It was not until it arrived to our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that it became manifest. What we know from the Quranic tradition is that there were scholars and elders who recognized the signs of prophethood. They recognized some of those signs. And this is what the Quran says. The Quran says in chapter 7, Surah Al-A'raf, verse 157, it describes who the Prophet was in a number of attributes or a number of qualities. 10 in total. الَّذِينَ, those who follow. الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الرَّسُولَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّيَّ. So those are the first three qualities, is that he's a messenger, he's a prophet, and he is unlettered. Now we'll come back to what that means. الَّذِي يَجِدُونَهُ مَكْتُوبًا عِنْدَهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ وَالْإِنْجِيلِ. The one whom they find is written about in the Torah and the Injil. The Torah and the Injil, meaning the Old and New Testaments. So the Quran claims that the description is there. And so people were familiar with those signs. Among those signs, they knew that he would appear in the Arabian Peninsula. They knew that, for instance, he would be from the lineage of Ibrahim. Now, some of them thought that he would be of the lineage of Ishaq from Ibrahim. And a lot of them did not expect him to be of the lineage of Ismail, because they had been so used to the prophets being descendants of Ishaq. However, there were some signs. They knew that, for instance, he had the seal of prophethood, and it was a physical seal, a sign that he had. They knew that, for instance, he did not accept charity, but he accepted gifts. And so those signs were apparent to them. Those signs were visible to them. And not only that, so they had expected this prophet to appear in the Arabian Peninsula. And so with Abdul Muttalib, with Abdullah, people noticed that in them there was a light, there was a certain illumination, and that it had stayed dormant until the Prophet, and it had manifested itself through the life of the Prophet. Now, one event is particularly interesting, which historians narrate. They say in that same year that Abdullah was married, so Abdullah, the father of the Prophet, marries Amina. And he stays in that home for a number of days. On his way, as he is going to get married, there's a woman by the name of Qutayla. Qutayla, her brother was Waraqa bin Nawfal. And for those of you who are familiar with the history, Waraqa bin Nawfal was a cousin of Khadija bint Khuwaylid. And it said that Waraqa was a well-versed man. He was well-read. And that he also understood and he recognized the attributes of this final prophet that was to come. Now, some say that when the prophet was ordained as a prophet, he came and confirmed. Some reject the story. However, we know that he was a well-versed man, and that he would also teach his sister, Qutayla, what he knew to be true. And so when Abdullah was on his way with his father to go and marry Amina, the father and mother of the Prophet, Qutayla saw him on the way. And she noticed this light, this illumination in him. And some narrations tell us that when she noticed that light, that special light, the light of the prophethood, that was not manifest in Abdullah. The people did not follow him as a prophet, nor did they follow Abdul Muttalib. However, the light was there, the illumination was there. And some people could recognize it. When she recognized it, she stopped Abdullah and on the spot, the narration says, she asked him to marry her instead. And so he refused. He proceeded with his father, and he married Amina, and he stayed in the home for a number of days. And then he left to go back to his home. She saw him again. Qutayla saw him again. However, this time she said, the light is not in you anymore. And so the idea is that it had been passed on from him to the womb of Amina bint Wahab. And narrations tell us, Amina describes herself, she says that when I bore Muhammad in my womb, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, that my home all of a sudden was full of light. The Prophet carried this light with him. He carried this energy with him. He carried this barakah, this blessing with him wherever he went. She said his light illuminated the entire home. So much so that we could see distances because of this light. We could see far distances which normally with the naked eye we would not be able to see. And when he was born, we are told that he was taken into the care of a woman by the name of Halima Sa'diyah. And if you read about the biographies of the founders of religions, the founders of faiths, you'll find some common elements there. For instance, and we're approaching the days of Christmas, that the story of the birth of Isa alayhi salam, Jesus, in the book of Matthew, it says that when he was born, there were the wise men from the east who came, and they gave the gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And they said that they were following a star, meaning that when he was born, a star became apparent to them, and they began to follow the path of that star until they reached Isa alayhi salam. The similar events are narrated in the births of other individuals, such as Zoroaster, who is the central figure in the Zoroastrian faith. And when it came to the story of the birth of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there are similar reports. So he was born and he brought with him a light. Imam Ali alayhi salam says the following about him. He says, and this is him describing the beginning of the message and the spread of that light, the spread of that illumination. He says the following. He says, from the time he was weaned, Allah ordered a mighty angel to care for him day and night. Meaning it was no coincidence. God ordered an angel to care for him day and night and guide him along the path of high character and good behavior. So from the beginning, he was a man of high character and of good behavior. I would follow him like a young camel following the footprints of its mother. This is an allegorical expression. If you've seen a camel and its offspring following it, other animals as well, the offspring follows. He says, I followed as if a young camel was following its mother. And it follows its mother for guidance. It follows its mother for sustenance. Because it cannot guide itself on its own. Every day he would show me signs of his moral virtues and ordered me to follow them. Every day. The Prophet was an example for him. Every single day, through his character and through his good behavior. Every year he sought seclusion in the hill or in the mountain of Hira. And this is where we know that the Prophet began to receive his revelation, where no one but I saw him. He says, I only had direct access to him during those days. In those days, Islam did not exist in any house other than in that of Khadija and Allah's Prophet. It was the landing point. It was the focal point where I lived as a third person. So the only people that were living in that home at that time, according to Imam Ali alayhi salam, was the Prophet, Khadija, and him. And that God had protected him from the day he was born. He had assigned angels in order to protect him and to guide him towards displaying good character and good morals and good behavior. So that light began to shine from the moment the Prophet was born. in the year 570. When Abdul Muttalib came back after the army attempted to invade Mecca, when Abdul Muttalib came back, that's when the Prophet was born. And so Abdullah, we know, who was the father of the Prophet, Abdullah was not in Mecca during Am al-Fil, during that year. He was not there to witness that event. He had gone on an expedition, on travel, and on his way back, he had stopped in Medina and he had passed away in Medina. That's where the father of the Prophet passed away, and he was buried in Medina. So he was brought to his grandfather, Abdul Muttalib, where he embraced him, and then he was sent out during his early years, during his infant years, he was sent out into the desert. And he was given to Halima Sa'diyah. Now, Halima herself narrates. She says that when we came to Mecca, in order to seek sustenance, we had nothing. Our cattle had ran out of milk. Our land was dry. We were hungry. Our children were hungry. In that very same year, Halima herself had given birth. And that's how she was able to later provide nursing to the Prophet, because she had just given birth. And so they came to Mecca in order to seek sustenance, because Mecca was a place of sustenance. And she says that when we arrived, we had nothing. Our cattle was dry, we were hungry, we were thirsty. And it worked out great for them. Why? Because the Prophet was born and his father had already passed away. So people looked at him as an orphan. So there were no history tells us there were no families in Mecca that wanted to accept him. Why? Because he was an orphan, and no good can come from an orphan, apparently. There's no blessings. Why would you take in someone when there's nothing that you can benefit? Because as human beings, it's our nature that, when we engage in a transaction, we want to know what's in it for us. How can I benefit? Because, there's no such thing as altruism or doing something because it's good. We're always looking for what we can also receive on our end. So people did not take in the Prophet because they said he was an orphan. What are we going to rely on his grandfather or his mother? There's no good that they can do. Halima Sa'diyah, her and her husband were in a desperate position. So she turned to her husband, she said, what about this orphan? What if we take this orphan? He agreed, he said, bring him, and he might bring his blessings and his barakah with him. The narrations tell us that when Halima took the Prophet, she says, as soon as I placed him on my chest, she said my breast was full of milk. And today, we look at this as miraculous and extraordinary. But today, and I had the chance a few months ago to speak to doctors concerning this. They say that they're discovering these days that when a child, an infant, is placed on the skin of his or her father and mother, that actually creates the environment for more milk to be produced. And not only that, the child, through that skin-to-skin contact, gives off certain hormones. Those hormones are then created in the breast milk, which develop a certain, it's like a medicine, which is specific to that child, which is specifically engineered to that child to protect them from certain illnesses. And so the doctors that I was speaking to, they said, there's nothing that as doctors or as chemists or as engineers, there's nothing that we can engineer that comes close to a mother's breast milk. After all these years of advancement, nothing comes close. So she said that she took the Prophet, she placed the Prophet as an orphan on her chest, and all of a sudden her milk began to flow. They took him to the desert where they lived, and all of a sudden the milk of their cattle began to flow. And the grass and the trees that were dead all of a sudden came to life. Now, some of us, we may look at this in a skeptical manner. that, how does that happen? Or maybe not some of us, or if you were to narrate the story. But if you think about that, as human beings, we carry energy with us, correct? We are bodies that give off of energy. We feed off of energy. That's how we produce. And there's different types of energy. There's good energy and there's bad energy. The Prophet was full of good energy, and he took his blessings wherever he went. And so his simple presence, and this was him as an infant. In the case of Isa alayhi salam, he speaks within the first few hours of his birth. He says something to defend himself and to defend his mother. We don't have that the Prophet actually said something. However, his mere presence itself was a blessing. It was a barakah in itself. And when you get around good people, good-hearted people, good-natured people, their blessing itself is a barakah. And when they're not around, you notice that something is lacking. And that was the Prophet during his entire life. Anybody who came to him, they found that he was a source of blessing. Just his existence, just being around him. And that's why it's recommended that we always mention, because even mentioning the name of the Prophet brings blessings. That's why we always send our blessings upon the Prophet and his family. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. That in itself is a method of bringing blessings upon us, especially when it's done in a group setting. Because the more it's done, the more it is compounded. The more the effects are compounded. And so, until the entire time that he lived, that he spent in Mecca and Medina and elsewhere, the Prophet brought his blessings. When he was born, the narration said that some of the idols that were sitting on top of the Kaaba, they fell. They fell from on top of the Kaaba and they were broken. The inhabitants of Medina, Yathrib, when the Prophet came, they said that all of a sudden our city was full of light. It was full of illumination. And that when the Prophet passed away, it became gloomy and dark. Now, what does the Quran tell us about this Prophet? There are a number of verses which describe the Prophet. This one in particular, chapter number 7, verse 157, tells us of a number of those attributes. الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الرَّسُولِ. Number one is that he was a messenger. Meaning, and what this means is that he was not only a prophet, and that's the second description. The second description is that he was a prophet. A prophet is one who brings news from God, who gives glad tidings. That's a prophet. A messenger, according to our scholars, is one who is not only a prophet, but is one level above, and that's a person who brings with them a scripture, a written book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're told of the different scriptures in our Quran. We're told that our Prophet has brought down the Quran. We are told that Ibrahim and Musa also carried scriptures with them. Suhufi Ibrahim wa Musa, right? We are told that Isa alayhi salam was given the Injil, the gospel. So these are all scriptures which render that prophet as a messenger. Meaning that a messenger is one who carries. So they carried these scriptures to their people. So one is a Rasul, messenger. One is a Nabi, right? And this is a confirmation. Because you can say, well, a Rasul, that already says that he's a prophet. Saying that he's a prophet is also a confirmation, right? Al-Rasul al-Nabi al-Ummi. Now this is an interesting one. Because some have just described Ummi as being illiterate. However, the Prophet was not illiterate. Because a person who is illiterate cannot teach. We read in Surah Al-Jum'ah that this person that was sent, this Prophet that was sent, يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. He teaches them kitab, which is the book. That's what he delivers to them. And hikmah. Hikmah is wisdom. So the Prophet was a man of wisdom. When we say ummi, that does not mean that he was not enlightened. What that refers to is that he did not receive formal education and training. In the way that we do today, our children, by law, have to be registered in school. And this was not the case back then. There was no law that said that your children had to be registered in school. In fact, it was not a right to be registered in school. It was a privilege. You had to know the right people in order to go through that formal learning and formal education process. Al-Ummi. الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل. Okay, so they see that his descriptions are in the Torah and the Injil, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And there's a list of verses. One of those verses is the following. And as for Ishmael, this speaks about the progeny of Ismail. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. So this is the book telling us that from Ismail there will be a great nation. الذي يجدونه مكتوبا عندهم في التوراة والإنجيل يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر. He commands them to do good, and he forbids them from doing evil. And these two go hand in hand. الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر. Sometimes we tell others to do good, but we forget to tell them to refrain from evil. Or ourselves, because it begins with ourselves. Sometimes some people, they'll choose to do good, and that's really the easier part than refraining from doing evil. You know, we have a to-do list, and what's tougher to get through is not a to-do list, but a not to-do list. When we refrain from certain things, it's tougher than committing to do certain things. You know, you commit to exercising, you commit to going to the gym. That's the easier part. But then refraining from certain foods, if you've ever been on a diet regimen, that's the toughest part about it. يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر. He eschews the vices. ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث. طيبات and خبائث. طيبات are those things which are pure and wholesome, meaning that he makes lawful for them the things which are pure and wholesome. And on the other hand, وَيُحَرِّمْ عَلَيْهِمُ الْخَبَائِثِ. He tells them to refrain from the things which are foul and are impure. And if you look at it, the list of things which we are commanded to refrain from, in reality, a lot of them are foul and impure. And sometimes we see it directly, and sometimes we don't see that directly. The next two is that he relieves from them their burdens, he removes difficulties, and when they follow him, they follow the light that he brought with him. We will mention those in the second khutbah, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ وَصَلُّوا عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ وَآلِ مُحَمَّدٍ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين نحمده ونسبحه ونقدسه على آلائه ونعمائه ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وصل اللهم وسلم على أوصيائه وخلفائه وعترته وأهل بيته علي أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المحجلين وعلى البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبط نبي الرحمة وسيد شباب أهل الجنة الحسن والحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه. عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله عز وجل. Surah Al-A'raf, chapter 7, verse 157, continues to describe the Prophet in the following way. وَيَضَعُ عَنْهُمْ إِصْرَهُمْ وَالْأَغْلَالَ الَّتِي كَانَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ فالذين آمنوا به وعزروه ونصروه واتبعوا النور الذي أنزل معه أولئك هم المفلحون. So one particularly interesting attribute that the Prophet had, that our Prophet had, is that he's described as a person who was sent in order to relieve the burden and remove the difficulties that people had placed upon themselves. And in a number of verses, we're told that the earlier people who are described in the Quran, the earlier tribes, the earlier people that the prophets were sent to, some of them would place hardship and burden upon themselves and then ascribe that hardship or that burden as being God's law. So what that means is they would engage in a behavior. They would refrain from enjoying certain things which God had not refrained from them from. They would refrain from consuming certain things which God had not refrained them from consuming. And then, so they would wrongfully do that, and then they would attribute that to God. They would say that God told us to do this. So they had created a burden and difficulty upon themselves. The characteristic of our Prophet in this verse is that he came in order to remove those burdens, relieve those burdens, and remove that difficulty. And there are a number of narrations where the Prophet says that the religion that I have brought forth is not meant to create burdens and hardship for people. And if you notice, a lot of the times, now put religion on the side, anytime that we want to do something, that's great. Anytime we want to do something for ourselves, anytime we want to do something significant, the first battle that you always have to fight is within. Because sometimes the path is clear for us, but in our mind, we make it difficult upon ourselves. So if I choose to, change my career or do this or do that or certain things that you want to do in your life, the first mental block, the first block that you have to go through, the first obstacle is the mental block that you have. What's this person going to think? What's that person going to say? If I decide to embrace my faith, maybe I come from a family where I wasn't taught to pray 5 times a day. And if I decide to do that, my parents are going to look at me, or my siblings are going to look at me, or my cousins are going to look at me in a funky way. And so we create these mental blocks and we make it hard upon ourselves. We create hardship for ourselves. We create obstacles for ourselves. And that's really the biggest thing that we have to get over. And that's what the Prophet, he said, this is what I came to do. I came to relieve hardship. I came to relieve the burden. And so that's something that we have to take into consideration. And this in itself is a form of mercy. Our Prophet is described, and that's his top characteristic. That's his hallmark attribute, is that he was a prophet of Rahmah, Nabiyur Rahmah. He was sent as a mercy, not to just the people of Arabia, Rahmatan lil Alameen, to the people of the world. If we only understand what the significance of the Prophet was. So this is one. And the final attribute which is described in this verse, it says that the people that followed him, those who followed him, those who believe in him, and those who honor him, and help him, and follow the light which has been sent down with him, those are the people that are successful. That light that was sent down with the Prophet, the illumination of guidance. Meaning that we also have to be beacons of light and guidance. Sometimes we underestimate ourselves and our own ability and the value that we have that we can add to people. Because nobody has taught us maybe to believe in ourselves. Nobody has taught us the value of what we have. The faith that you have. The light that you can provide for other people. So those people who follow the light of the Prophet, they are the ones that are truly successful. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be of the followers of the light of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be followers in His guidance, to be role models for His mercy and justice. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be His true representatives so that the people of the world can today see truly what the message of Islam is about. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Two quick announcements. Tonight the youth of our masjid have the First Fridays event, the monthly First Fridays event beginning tonight. And tomorrow we are celebrating the birth of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ here at the IECOC. It'll be an interfaith and intrafaith event. We have guest speakers. We have Dr. Sherman Jackson, who is a professor of Islamic Studies at USC, the University of Southern California. We have Rabbi Lee Weissman coming in. Sayyid Hadi will also be here tomorrow. So please invite your friends and family members. The program starts at 7 o'clock, but we won't begin with prayer because this hall will be set up with chairs. So please perform your Maghrib and Isha prayers at home and come, and please invite everyone. Dinner will be served, inshallah, and we will see you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.